Hey math fans, solving inequalities. So it's less thans, greater thans, and all of that stuff, and solving them. So we've looked at x is less than negative 2. Let's remind ourselves what that would look like on a number line. We would go above the negative 2, put an empty circle because it cannot equal it, and put an arrow going in that direction. That would be if we wanted to write x is less than negative 2. A reminder that that looks a bit like an L, so you can sort of write less than. That's how we know. Also, the small end is the smaller number. The bigger end of the inequality is the bigger number. So minus 2 is bigger than x. Now, there's a few rules when it comes to solving inequalities that we need to be aware of. We know that 5 plus 2 equals 7. We also know that 7 equals 5 plus 2. I can swap those things over, doesn't matter. If x equals 3, I can say 3 equals x. Makes no difference. They are telling me the two things are equal. So swap around, doesn't matter. When we have inequalities, it doesn't work like that. 5 plus 2 is greater than 3. I can't then say 3 is greater than 5 plus 2. Those are the opposite thing, aren't they? 3 is not bigger than 5 plus 2, 7. That doesn't make sense. So, anytime that you want to just quickly swap things around like this, you've got to change the sign. You've got to reverse the inequality from a greater than to a less than, or vice versa. So, anytime you're swapping things over sides, you've got to reverse the sign, if you ever want to do that. If you end up with 2 is greater than x, and you want to have x at the front, just make sure that x is that small side, so x is less than 2. If 2 is greater than x, then x is less than 2. Okay? That's one of the rules. Rule number 2 is to do with dividing and multiplying by a negative. If I multiply these both by 2, times by 2, times by 2, I would get 10 is greater than 6. That's still true. Nothing wrong with that. 5 times 2 is 10. Yeah, this is true, no problem. However, when I multiply by a negative number, what happens here is that we get minus 5 and minus 3. Minus 5 is greater than minus 3? No, it's not. Minus 5 is a smaller number, way further left on the number line. Okay? So any time that we multiply by a negative, that sign has to change as well. So when we multiply by a negative in inequalities, we have to reverse the sign. Let's just explain that again. 5 times minus 1 is minus 5. 3 times minus 1 is minus 3. But because I multiply by a negative, and this is the same if you divide by a negative, you must change the sign. Because 5 is bigger than 3, but minus 5 is smaller than minus 3, or negative 3. Okay, so big rule, write this down. In inequalities, any time you divide by a negative, reverse the sign. Less than to greater than to less than. Got to do it. Let's look at some examples of solving. Each of these I'm going to show you a couple of different ways. You choose the method that you prefer. So I'm going to bring brackets straight in. Hopefully you're comfortable with them. Remember how to do it. So, method 1 here, I'm going to multiply out the brackets first. 3 times 4x is 12x. 3 times 2 is 6. Less than 30. Now, the method for this is exactly the same as solving equations. Just, instead of an equals, we have an inequals, an inequality. So we've got less than in there. So 12x plus 6, less than 30. Now I'm going to take away 6 from both sides. Take away 6, and I'm going to get 12x is less than 30 minus 6 is 24. My last step, divide by 12. Divide by 12. And I get x is less than 2. So almost exactly the same as solving equations, but instead of an equals, we have a less than. Some people even like to kind of cross that out, put an equals in, and then just remember to put it back in at the end. But it's very easy to forget. So I like to keep the less than or greater than in there. Show you a second method for this one. Instead of multiplying the bracket first, what I can do is I can divide by 3 first. So if I divide by 3 and divide by 3 here, because the 3 is multiplied by everything there, when I divide by 3 I just cancel that out. So I end up with just 4x plus 2 over this side, and 30 divided by 3 is 10. Now let's take away 2, and I get 4x is less than 8. Divide by 4, divide by 4, divide by 4, and we get x is less than 2. Did we get the same thing? Yeah. So 2 different methods, depends how you like to do it. If it's easy to divide by the number outside the bracket, might be a little bit shorter, up to you. Let's look at now one with negatives. So I'm going to show you 3 different methods this time. 2 kind of the same, and then one slightly different one. So, the first one we multiplied out the brackets. Let's do that with this one. So I've got minus 2 times 5x is minus 10x. Minus 2 times minus 1, negative times a negative is positive, and that is greater than 8. Now I'm going to take away the 2 from both sides, minus 2, and I get minus 10x is greater than 8 minus 2 is 6. My last step here is to divide by negative 10. Divide by negative 10. And if I divide by a negative, I'm going to have to change the sign. So I'm going to get x, instead of greater than, I'm going to go to less than. And 6 divided by minus 10, 6 divided by 10 is 0.6, or 6/10, or 3/5, as you like. So I'm going to get, let's do it as a minus 0.6. Let's do it as a decimal. There we go. Method number 2 is where I divided by the negative straight away. If I divide by minus 2 there, so I've got minus 2 brackets 5x minus 1 greater than 8, divide by the negative 2, divide by the negative 2, and I'm going to get 5x minus 1. I've divided by negative, so change the sign. The greater than becomes a less than. 8 divided by negative 2 is negative 4. Now I'm going to add 1 to both sides, and I get 5x less than. Minus 4 plus 1 is minus 3. Divide by 5, and I end up with, divide by 5, and I get x is less than minus 3 over 5, which is the same as negative 0.6. Okay, that's a second method that we can use. The other way we could do it is to not end up dividing by a negative. Now this is a bit fiddly, but some people don't like dividing by the negative, so we're going to follow the same method of expanding the bracket first. So I'm going to get minus 10x plus 2 is greater than 8. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 10x to both sides. Add 10x, and I'm going to get 2 is greater than 10x add 8. So I basically got rid of that negative in front of the x by chucking it over the other side, adding 10x to both sides. Now if I take away the 8, I get minus 6 is greater than 10x. Now when I divide, I'm dividing by a positive, so I don't have to change the sign. And I get minus 6 over 10, which is the same, of course, greater than x. And just be careful, if you want to rewrite this as x at the front, we would get x is less than minus 6 over 10, or minus 0.6, as they all were. So loads of different methods for that, but just be careful when you divide by a negative, change the sign.